It's not just something you can easily forget or walk away from. You're constantly on guard. You can never rest without thinking about it. The mind replays what the heart can't delete. The quotes I just read are from members of mental health community that live with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I personally don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, but my dad, he's a Vietnam War veteran. And now 40 something years later, he still has nightmares about his time over there. So my name is Candace Tuck, and today I want to talk to you about PSTD by defining the condition, talking about some symptoms, and what to do if a loved one suffers from or lives with post-traumatic stress disorder. Most people experience one traumatic event in their lifetime, ranging from being mugged to a car accident or losing a loved one. And although men are more likely to experience a traumatic event, women usually experience high impact traumatic events that lead to PSTD. So, what is PSTD? It's a mental health condition triggered by a terrifying traumatic event. It's a term it was introduced to psychiatry in 1980, a little while after the Vietnam War. It's one of several psychiatric disorders that can develop in people exposed to severe trauma, such as a major physical injury, participation in warfare, assault, rape, or any event where there's a major loss or threat of a major loss. Symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder can be recognized at different points throughout history. The Great Fire in London in 1666, and the shell shocks of soldiers from World War One, World War Two, or even Operation Desert Storm. Those wars are examples. Some psychologists even argue that the hysterical woman, if you know anything about psychology, treated by Joseph Breuer and Sigmund Freud, were actually suffering from symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Just a little background. 7 to 8% of the population will suffer from PTSD at some point in their lives. 8 million adults, about 8 million adults have it at any time during a given year, which is only a small portion of the people who've gone through trauma. Women are more likely to develop PTSD, and about 10% of women compared to 4% of men. Okay, so now that we've talked about the definition, I've given you a little background, let's discuss some symptoms. But first, I want you to remember that not all trauma develops into PTSD. Some develop into other disorders, such as depression, anxiety, OCD, things like that. And then it's not always immediately after the trauma that it happens. It could be you had one severe trauma, then a little while down the line, you have another one that triggers the post-traumatic stress disorder. And the trauma that you experience usually dictates the traumatic reaction. So contrary to popular belief, PTSD sufferers are not ticking time bombs, walking around wanting to go postal, or they're not all homeless, and they're not all destitute. People with PTSD have varying symptoms. They usually have regular recurrences of a memory or images of a stressful event, what we call flashbacks, especially when they're reminded of it. And we'll talk about that. That's a little tricky, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. They may experience insomnia, have feelings of guilt, survivor's remorse, or they cause it, maybe feel isolated, and may have an inability to concentrate. All of these which can lead to some irritability. PSTD, as it says, can show up as behavioral, emotional, mental, or physical, such as a headache. It could be a panic attack, depression, guilt, flashbacks, any of these that we've discussed. Any questions? So we've gone over some symptoms and scenarios. So what do you do when it's someone you love? Okay, so there's some ways that you can help the person you love deal with PTSD. The most important is understanding the condition and understanding that it's not about you. So, although it may be tiring, it may be scary. Imagine how the person that's living with the condition is feeling. Okay, so the importance for you to take the time, if you're living with a loved one that has PTSD, to take the time to understand their condition. You can look up more information on it. You can go to counseling together. You can talk to them and ask them, what are your triggers? What can I do to help? What may set it off? So some of the triggers that may set off could be a car backfiring, gunshot, firecrackers. Things sound like a gunshot. It could be slamming of a door, depending on the trauma. It could be a certain smell, a forest fire, disinfectant, anything. Could be strong negative emotion. It all depends on the trauma. We know people who suffer great traumas in the world because of not social media, but we live in a technology age, so we know people who've experienced great trauma. Just some of those things that they experienced during that time, something small to us could trigger those feelings of PTSD. One thing I do know is that we don't pressure them to talk. Don't be afraid of them, and don't starve them. Okay. When they want to talk, listen to what they got to say. Like I said, ask what you can do to help and comfort them when they're going through. It may be a panic attack. It may be they feel real small like a child, want to sit in a corner. But anything that find out what it is that you can do to help and make it easier for you and your loved one. But most important, remember to take care of yourself. You need to take a little time if you can for yourself, and I say do that anyway. Also, go to counseling with that person if they're seeking treatment and find out more about the treatment. Learn as much as you can about the disorder. And learn as much as you can about the disorder. And that's it. So hopefully you've gained something from this topic today, about post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what live in a utopian world. We cannot avoid trauma. There are many stigmas associated with mental health, and I hope that I've helped you today by help you to recognize, and understand how to help a loved one living with PTSD. So the next time you see someone that may be a little off, instead of pointing the finger or talking negatively, remember they just may be something from something you never understand. And I do have a little quote. You don't need another human being to make your life complete, but let's be honest. Having your wounds kissed by someone who doesn't see them as disasters in your soul, but cracks to put their loved ones into is the most common thing in this world. By Emery. Thank you all. Have a great day.